Well, for those of you listening in the future, supplies, total ambush stream, ambush beyond ambush, because I was under the impression that I could get in trouble for streaming the press conference live. Hopefully I'm not. But I guess we'll find out momentarily or shortly. Let's see. View on YouTube. And get my chat going here. I guess technically this is all public domain, so far as I'm told. I guess we'll see. Unless I need to do it right off of the White House's website. I suppose I could do that too. Hold on. Just to make sure. Let's see. No, I can't do it like that. I think I'm okay. I hope I'm okay. I suppose I could switch it over here. Let's see. Let me try this again just to be on the safe side. Just to be on the safe side. Okay. There we go. Now I'm really doing it on the White House's site. So there's no YouTube branding on anything. But yes, good evening, everyone. Welcome to a spur of the moment flash ambush instantaneous instant gratification stream ahead of TED Excellence tonight. I still have that to do in about 2 hours. But yes, we're soon purportedly going to have a press conference from President Biden that is going to be entirely about NATO. I'm sure all the questions will be about NATO. It won't be about how he just called the president of the Ukraine Putin when introducing him before a crowd. But anyway. Oh, Derek LaRue. Thank you, Derek LaRue, so much. It's very generous of you. Appreciate it. Hope you're having a good evening and hope you enjoy the show for what it is. Again, impromptu and everything. Thank you very much, Derek. And who else is here popping in? Kiro Soldier. Good evening. Mike Savage. Good evening. Noah Sentio. Good evening. Angelverse. Good evening. Vanessa One. Good evening. What's there? Matthew James. The Best Remy. Mike R. Spittlebuggies. Simon Willigans. Unit 731. Corey Suzuki. Blitz Zero. And Josh Hammond. Good evening to you all. Yes, we are waiting with bated breath. We are live with the opening card here. And we are waiting for the presentation to begin. Also, Jonathan Peterson, good evening. Cynic, good evening to you. Yes, so this is one more, if we need any more, litmus tests for President Biden's ability to maintain his mentality, his acuity, his cognition, his attention, and so on, because none of us knew that this was a problem up until June 27th or 26th or whatever it was. Every one of these instances now is just further evidence of elder abuse. They keep putting him into situations where the big question is, the only reason anybody tunes in is to see if he has an utter meltdown, either as bad or worse than the debate. Why would you do this to this person? I mean, whatever you think about Biden as a politician, his politics or otherwise, if you actually care about this person, let's say you're in his inner circle, you know, whether it's his staff, advisors, his family, if you just keep putting him in front of the cameras, waiting to see if and when he breaks, why would you want that on camera? Why would you want to put your elderly loved one through that? Even if it's against his own better sense, of which he doesn't have much, unless you absolutely do not care about his well-being. It's criminal at this point. It really is, both on a ethical, moral level. But nobody wants to. Well, I should say, few people want to talk about the bigger question here, and that's the constitutionality of having someone that is so demonstrably incapacitated helming the country. I mean, this has been a constitutional crisis since, I mean, I'd say at least since 2020, but without anyone being able to deny it who's being serious, at least since 2021 or early 2022. But here we are. And now everybody's like, oh, well, we really should play up Kamala Harris. Oh, yeah. What a winner. What a winner. Also, Urkele DeStefano, good evening. Lil Mo Zizlak, good evening. And they've pushed this conference back twice now. It was supposed to start, as it says there, 6:30. Actually, I take it back. It was originally supposed to start at 5:30 p.m. Eastern. Then they pushed it back an hour. And last I heard, they pushed it back till, 3 minutes ago, 7 o'clock Eastern time. Every minute that passes that they're pushing this back, or it's not starting, brings Joe closer to sundown, if you get my meaning. Which isn't good. You need Joe operating when werewolves cannot. And why are we tuning in? Because we're all waiting. It's like watching a car race or something, right? NASCAR or a hockey game or something. I mean, you're there for the sport, but you're also kind of there for the collisions, right? You're there for the fights. You're there for the accidents. You're there for the minor disasters or the possibility of seeing something really terrible happen. That's part of the draw. I don't like the idea, even though I am obviously contributing to it. I don't like the idea of turning our politics such as this into a train wreck observation exercise. I don't like I don't like the fact that's where we are at, but that is unfortunately the truth of the matter. So, Brad Young, good evening. Darren Root, good evening. It's evening on the East Coast, and it's not quite evening yet where I am, but it's, late afternoon, let's say. So, yeah, evening it's close enough for horseshoes and hand grenades, as they say. But are we still live? We're still waiting. Yes, we are still live. It's the waiting that's the hardest part. So, yeah. So what are you guys thinking? So far, we've got Biden calling Zelensky Putin. We've got the Democrats trying to play up Kamala Harris in polls and stuff. Apparently, a poll was run matching Kamala up against Trump, and she was 3 points ahead of Trump. 49% to 46%. I mean, exactly within the margin of error for polling. But other than that, yeah, in a snapshot poll, Kamala Harris was leading Donald Trump. Hey, what a matchup that would be. Yoshi the Macabre. Yeah, I always want to say macabre, but then I want to make it fancy like macabre. Eric Grinstetter. Good evening to you. So yes, as Tom Petty said, it's the waiting that's the hardest part. And here we are. I've been waiting now for an hour and a half because it was supposed to start an hour and a half ago. But I guess I just have to fill up the airwaves, just like everybody else waiting for this thing. I know P-Dog streaming this right now. I think I'm pretty sure Agenda Free TV is streaming this. Probably everybody under the sun is streaming this. And so why not get in on the action? Sure. Now, on the off chance, and it is an off chance, that this sucker either takes long enough to start or goes long enough to start to interfere with TED Excellence, I might bow out to start TEDx on time tonight because I don't want to do that. But given Biden's mental stamina, if this starts anywhere within the next hour, I doubt it'll go longer than about 30 minutes if it goes that far. Because either he or his handlers will realize that the sun's going down. So I guess we'll see. Also, Luke Skywalker 2, good evening. And Corey Suzuki says, Biden is still napping. He's either napping or he's getting his vitamin B shots or something. Who knows? Who knows? We will see. In the meantime, what else is going on? Not much. Same old. I want to save all my TEDx patter for TED Excellence tonight at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern. I don't have anything else to be sharing, do I? Not really. Just kind of waiting, just like all of you. The suspense is killing me. I'm not quite sure what their plan is. I'm talking about the Democrats. You've got a lot of people you had George Clooney come out the other day and with an op-ed saying, yeah, Joe, you need to step down. Now, this was after consultation with Obama, where George Clooney, before he publishes this op-ed, he calls up Obama, and I'm guessing, I'm sure there are probably more informed people that know otherwise, but I'm just guessing, like saying, hey, Barry, I'm going to do this thing. Is that okay? And I got a feeling that Barack Obama wasn't so much do it as he was, you do what you feel you need to do. Taking a very, I'm certain, a very Switzerland line. Because at this stage of the game, I think the only political operative that could conceivably pull Joe down from his crow's nest is Barack Obama. If Barack Obama made the call to Joe saying, Joe, it's time to step down, that might happen. But I don't know. He's got so many sycophants around him. He's got an entire party that doesn't, on the one hand, they don't want to concede that they've been propping up and covering for a brainless zombie for the last 4 years. At the same time, they don't have any other avenue to challenging Trump at this point. And like I've said before, every day that Biden stays in the race is one less day the Democrats have to put up someone else as a reasonable alternative. Even if that's Kamala. I mean, I'll tell you what, insofar as having a notion that someone in the White House or potentially in the White House has at least a functioning brain, I understand that's given Kamala Harris's previous activities and performances, that's questionable, but at least is not an octogenarian with an obvious mental decline. Even she's a better option than having Joe at the forefront right now. But again, every day Biden stays in the race, he is detracting from the opportunity for a more qualified Democrat to have a chance to introduce themselves to the electorate, whether it's Kamala Harris or Gavin Newsom or, whoever, Gretchen Whitmer or, Joe Bob down the street, whoever. His selfishness is eroding away the Democrats' chances of any kind of victory in November, both in the executive and in Congress. And some people may cheer that, and I understand that. But for the balance and fairness and actual meaningful competition of ideas and values for the sake of a presidential election, it's an absolute disaster for everybody. There's no reasoned debate. There's no, as I said, competition of ideas or values. It's just, it's even more of a reality show than it was maybe last time, which is saying something when you had a reality show host up for president a couple of cycles back. Robert Pincus, good evening. And let's see. Mike Savage says, from a financial point, they have to pick Harris as the runner. Donations can only be used for Biden or Harris. Well, that's the other thing, too. Yeah, the war chest of the Biden campaign is accessible only to the candidates within the Biden campaign. That includes Kamala Harris. So if they don't go with Harris, yeah, all that fundraising activity they've been doing basically since 2021 and onward goes to waste. They'd have to start all over again. So yeah, it's pretty much Kamala Harris or nothing, or leaning on the kindness of billionaire strangers to try to play catch up for whoever ends up being the nominee if it's not Kamala. Yeah. So again, every day that Biden decides to stay in the race, both on a political level and on a financial level, he's depriving some other candidate from having a shot. We are now 12 minutes past the last pushback of timing. I don't know if they've again officially delayed it. I will check and see if I can find anything on the news deals here. Any updates? Let's see. Oh, Midnight's Edge is going live. I would join that, but like I've said before, I often find myself a little inadequate around the Hollywood insider professionals talking about some of the behind-the-scenes news stuff. Talking about movies, I could do that stuff all day. Hold on. I might have a Sinatra here. Let's see. Hold on. I've sent him the link. We'll see if Sinatra pops in. But yeah, so far I don't see an official or even rumored pushback on the timing. So I guess we're just waiting and waiting. Oh, it's Miranda Stone. Good evening, Miranda Stone. How are you? Hope you're doing well. And then a wild Sanute appears. Maybe. If his microphone's working. I don't know. But yes, good evening. There he is.
Hello.
Hello, hello, hello. What a wonderful word. Hello.
What's going on, brother?
Well, we are waiting, and waiting is the hardest part. This was supposed to start at 5:30 p.m. Eastern, then 6:30 p.m. Eastern, then 7 p.m. Eastern, and now we're at about 7:15 Eastern, and still hasn't started. And every minute we go brings us closer and closer to sundown. And you know what that means for Joe?
Yeah.
So we're just waiting. We already had Joe Biden at a previous appearance prior to this introduce President Vladimir Zelensky as President Putin in front of an audience, which was both hilarious and once again disturbing. And now we just wait for the. Yeah, go ahead.
I wonder what's the holdup? What's the holdup? My guess is that Putin gaffe, as they call it. I'm sure he was just stuttering. That Putin gaffe put the fear of God into his staff and everybody else about what might happen at a minutes-long, unscripted, face the nation press conference only a few minutes later. And that's why they pushed it back first by an hour and then by half an hour. And here we are still waiting. They are coaching him. They are getting his earpiece inserted. They're pumping him full of vitamin B. I don't know what's going on, but that's my guess, is that they're in panic mode right now. Did you see the David Pakman thing on
oh, God. Yeah, that was great. It's like, so what if he has Parkinson's? I don't care.
Yeah, it's fine. It's just better than Orange Man.
Yeah, I for whatever it's worth, and it isn't really worth anything. I responded. I said, so keep pushing an elderly man suffering from a degenerative disorder into the public spotlight, requiring of him the physical and mental tempo of a presidential candidate, while also still being a sitting president on the prospect of 4 more years of same. This is abuse. I saw somebody else saying, I don't care who runs against Trump. It could be a pile of vomit. It just can't be, like. This is what got you guys in this position in the first place. You didn't care who it was as long as it wasn't Trump. Anyone but Trump.
Yeah.
And here we are. And they've painted themselves into a corner with a brainless octogenarian and a absolutely uninspiring vice president who is the only option for the Democrats to use, both politically speaking, identity politics speaking, and financially speaking, as was pointed out earlier in the chat. The war chest for the Biden campaign can only be used by the Biden campaign. So all the fundraising that's been going on all these months can only really be used by Kamala Harris if you're going to have an alternative to Biden. Other than that, somebody's got to start from scratch. And like I was saying, every day Biden stays in the race, he's depriving some quote unquote better candidate of both fundraising opportunities and for making themselves known to the electorate.
I'm very curious what the plan is, because the money's been going to the DNC, not exactly the Biden campaign. So I thought the campaign itself had its own war chest. I'm sure it does, but I'm sure the DNC, capital DNC, the corporation, is the one with most of the money coming in. Could be.
Yeah, I'll admit my expertise on campaign finance is not what it might have been years ago.
And that's probably going right to Newsom or
whoever they can't get rid of Kamala. The optics will not allow them to get rid of Kamala.
Oh, why not?
nobody likes Kamala.
No, they are working overtime right now, playing her up. They've done polls trying to show that she's beating Biden. I'm sorry, beating Trump in a snapshot polling and survey. They cannot drop the first female of color potential presidential candidate and retain the support of their most sycophantic followers. They just can't. It would be terrible.
Know,
if they put Gavin Newsom up ahead of Kamala Harris, the old white man, at least old to most of the voters out there who have been brainwashed into thinking that identity politics is the only way you can politic.
I feel like they'd be more likely to keep her as the VP than anything.
Oh man, that would be to be the bridesmaid but never the bride twice in a row.
Like, Kamala, you're doing a bang up job right where you're at. You just keep talking the way you're. Don't do that. Just keep doing what you're doing.
They're working her up to be a replacement right now. There's been too much. They're trying. It's not going to work as far as I'm concerned, or at least they'd have to do something completely drastic. But I think it's not impossible that there's still enough anyone but Trump sentiment that as long as they replace Biden with someone who is halfway competent, they could still be a contender just on the basis of anyone but Trump again mentality.
Oh yeah. And this Project 25 or whatever thing,
which I keep hearing about and I know very little about. Yeah.
It's all made up.
Yeah.
Like, I have not seen one credible source about this. And they keep saying, "Oh, it's a conservative think tank." Well, is it?
Well, when I started hearing about them, my first thought was to the old Project for a New American Century deal from way back in Bush's era. And it's, some sort of like, set of goals and virtues and everything else from a conservative bent or whatever. I'm just like, well, a list of goals doesn't mean things are actually going to happen. And like, this is the evil plan to take over the world. Like, sure it is.
People keep saying it's coming from Trump. Trump is the one giving us Project 25. And he came out and he's like, no, I don't like this. I don't like Project 25. And they're like, it's Trump.
Yeah. Yeah. They keep saying, dude, Google Project 25, 2025. Like, okay. Google dementia.
Yeah.
Google
Alzheimer's symptoms.
Yeah. Google Project 25th Amendment. I mean, trying to distract with all this other nonsense right now when there's, like I said, there is a constitutional crisis that's been going on since at least 2022 and probably earlier, but few people that were being honest with themselves could deny the issues with Biden going back at least as 2022.
Yeah, but they just say, okay, so what if there is an issue? It's fine.
Right, yeah, David Pakman kind of thing. I mean, even at this late date, David Pakman, I'm kind of like, I used to watch a lot of David Pakman. Back in the olden days, man, I used to watch old school Young Turks. I used to watch Rachel Maddow. I used to watch David Pakman back when I was first getting into my sort of political awareness. Like, I didn't really start paying attention to politics until, my mid to late 20s. Because it just didn't matter to me so much. And then I started getting interested in it and global stuff. And especially, I mean, my first real thinking beyond the boundaries of my world was, like a lot of people, was 9/11. But yeah, back then, I mean, I liked Keith Olbermann back in the day. Old school Keith Olbermann, when he was actually like criticizing the administration and calling out questions about the Iraq war and everything. I was like, he was one of the few people on TV that I heard saying anything. Was everybody else was sort of like, anything said against Bush is treason, or you're question your patriotism or something. I'm just like, well, wait a second.
And now they are just as quick to say, if you say anything against Biden, you are Jan Sixther.
I mean, it's been a complete, shift over time of seeing everybody turning over a new leaf as soon as they became the ones in power or something. As soon as Obama became president, anybody who questions Obama, you can't, like, wait a second, you're the same ones saying the same thing about Bush just a few years ago. And of course, I suppose I was just an ideological, or I should say, a naive babe in the woods at the time, because I thought, how dare you flip your script as soon as you're in power? Oh, wait a second. Yeah, I guess that is kind of normal.
Yeah.
Fostonia, thank you so much for the samurai dogcat fox holding a trophy. Why, it's a
Nice.
dogcat fox. I wonder what dogcat fox I should use. How about...
Wow. Wow.
No, there's a Sinatra dogcat fox.
I caught
have
that
another,
dog fat cocks.
I have another... I don't know if you've seen this before, but if you haven't, now you will.
That's awesome.
I got one for you. I got one for Tail. Got one for Irate Alex, and one for who? Yeah, I know who is Irate Alex. I don't know. I hear he's going to be breeding again. But I'll do the trifecta here. So here's There we go.
That's awesome.
Yeah, let's get our cavalcade going. We're just filling time, everybody. We're waiting on Joe. That's gonna be the name of a stage play in the near future. Waiting on
Why
Joe.
if
As
they just cancel it?
At this point they should, because in all seriousness, the later that they go into the evening, the worse it's going to get. We saw how he was operating at 9 p.m. Eastern, I think, when the debate took place.
Yeah,
Something like that. And now they're edging towards 7:30 and nigh on to 8 o'clock in the evening. He's not going to get any better than he was when he called Zelensky Putin.
They're gonna have to schedule it for 8 o'clock tomorrow morning.
Something, yeah. No, I forget who I think I said to my sister after the debate. I said that is the best you will ever see Biden at that hour again for the rest of his life, because every day is just 1 inch lower into the pit. And anybody who's dealt with an elderly relative before, who obviously is showing signs of decline. Yeah, sure, you have good days, you have bad days, but the good days are never as good as the last good day. It just keeps getting worse. So, people use the phrase elder abuse a lot lately. And like I say, whatever else you think about Joe Biden as a politician, his past or otherwise, he is an old man being propped up into situations that just think if you had your own non-politician elderly relative and you had a choice. Should you put them up in front of the entire world's cameras to operate like they're a political genius or something? Or would you want them at home resting and living out the last years of their life as comfortably as possible?
Just watching TV.
Yeah, that's what he should be doing, watching TV or something.
I don't know how these people who, and we all know that they are just dishonest by nature, how they can look at him calling Zelensky Putin and then go, well, it's just because he has a stutter.
Oh, the stutter thing. Good God. I mean, the stutter, he had a cold, what was it? Deep fakes or whatever they were calling them, or the cheap fakes. Let's see. Wait a second here. Roast Pinta, Scribe, Sinatra, Colleen B says, hi. Is that senior staff reporter and chief Florida correspondent Colleen Byrne? Yay.
Oh, that's an old.
I know. I don't get to say that very often. I'm actually surprised it rolled off the tongue as quickly as it did without my practice. But hello,
That's
Colleen.
A callback
Byrne.
and a half.
I know. Yeah, we did. Wasn't too long ago that Monkey Satsu and I ended up on a stream together for a little while talking about stuff, and that was like old home week
Monkey?
again. Yeah, where is Monkey? If Monkey's around,
Who's that guy?
I don't know. He's some guy. He's just some guy.
Just some dude.
Yeah, so just so everybody knows, both us and everybody else waiting with bated breath for Joe Biden to start his press conference are honing their art of filling dead air.
We're talking about nothing.
Yeah, Just Interrogations. Good evening to you, Just Interrogations, a true crime friend. Speaking of which, my next
Crime.
my true crime friend. Yeah, well, I got friends in low places. What can I tell you? My next big true crime event or true crime content creator event is going to be on July 26th, 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern.
Oh, here he comes.
Distinguished guests, the President of the United States, Joe Biden.
Here we go, everybody. Oh boy. See if I can.
Thank you. Please be seated.
Oh boy.
Well, good evening. We just concluded this year's NATO summit, and the consensus among the members was it was a great success. It's especially momentous because it represented the 75th year, the most important military defense alliance in the world's history of the world. We should never forget that NATO grew out
What's
of the
happening to the
wreckage of
sound?
World War II, the most destructive war in history. The idea was to create an alliance of free and democratic nations that would commit themselves to a compact of collective defense. Standing together, they knew we'd all be safer. An attack on one would be treated as an attack on all. And it's
Safer
worked
from whom?
because a would-be aggressor knows if they attack one of us, they'll be attacked by all of us. Sending that message is the best way to deter aggression and prevent wars in the first place. For those who thought NATO's time had passed, they got a rude awakening when Putin invaded Ukraine. Some of the oldest and deepest fears in Europe roared
Ukraine
back
isn't
to life.
a NATO member.
Because once again, a murderous madman was on the march. This
Zelensky.
time,
Yeah.
no one cowered in appeasement, especially the United States. We collected intelligence that Russia was planning to invade Ukraine months before the invasion. I directed the intelligence community to be a significant amount of intelligence be declassified.
Oh,
So I
good.
could start building an international coalition to oppose the invasion. Then in February, some of you remember, I warned the world that the invasion was imminent. I rallied a coalition of 50 nations from Europe to Asia to help Ukraine defend itself.
Who?
Many foreign policy experts thought, as Putin amassed Russian forces just 100 miles north of Kyiv, the capital of Ukraine, but
Yes.
Putin thought it was the mother home of Russia. The capital would fall in less than a week. But the Ukrainian people, backed by a coalition to help build, stopped them. Today, Kyiv still stands.
For
And NATO
now,
stands
they haven't been
stronger than it has
stopped.
ever been. During the week of this summit, several heads of states made it a point in their statements to thank the United States and to thank me personally for all that NATO has achieved. NATO is not only stronger, NATO is bigger because we led the charge to bring in Finland and Sweden into the alliance. And it makes a gigantic difference. Excuse me.
does it?
Meanwhile, my predecessor has made it clear
Oh boy.
he has no commitment to NATO. He's made it clear that he would feel no obligation to honor Article 5.
To those
He's
nations that
already
did not
told
meet
Putin,
their
I quote,
2%
Do
commitment.
whatever the hell you want. In fact, the day after Putin invaded Ukraine, here's what he said.
Okay.
It was genius. It was wonderful. Some of you forgot that, but that's exactly what he said. But I made it clear a strong NATO is essential to American security.
Yeah.
And
but what
I
does that have to do
believe
with
the
Ukraine?
obligation of Article 5 is
Right.
sacred. And I would remind all Americans, Article 5 is invoked only once in NATO's long history, and that was to defend America after 9/11. I made it clear that I will not bow down to Putin. I will not walk away from Ukraine. I will keep NATO strong. That's exactly what we did, and exactly what we'll continue to do. Now, the future of American policy is up to the American people. This is much more than the political question. It's more than that. It's a national security issue. Don't reduce this to the usual testament that people talk about, issues of being a political campaign. It's far too
Like you're doing
important.
right now.
It's about the world we live in for decades to come. Every American must ask herself or himself, Is the world safer with NATO?
Yourselves.
Are you safer? Is your family safer? I
No.
believe the American people know. The answer to all those questions is yes. And I believe the American people understand that America is stronger because
Yeah,
of our
because
alliances.
everything after 9/11 worked out so well.
I believe the American consensus from Truman to Reagan to me still holds today. America cannot retreat from the world. We must lead the world. We're an indispensable nation, as Madeleine Albright wrote. Now let me turn to 3 other key issues.
Uh-oh.
Just this morning, we had a great economic report showing inflation is down. Overall prices fell last month. Core inflation is the lowest it's been in 3 years.
Nope.
Prices are falling for cars, appliances, and airfares.
Airfare.
Grocery
Where?
prices have fallen since the start of the year. We're going to
Where?
keep working to take down corporate greed to bring those prices down further. Meanwhile, Trump's calling for a 10% tariff on everything Americans buy, including food from overseas, vegetables, and other necessities. And economists tell us that would cost the average American working family another $2,500 a year. It's a tax of $2,500 a year. Second, our efforts to secure the border, southern border, is working.
Are
After
they?
Trump killed the bipartisan effort to secure the border, Republicans and Democrats had worked
You could have
on
done the executive
because
order
he
any
thought
time.
it would benefit me and make him a loser. Republicans walked away. So I took executive action last month.
Except you
As a
said you didn't have that
consequence,
power without Congress's
Working with
action.
Mexico, border encounters have gone down over 50%. The current level is lower today than when Trump left office.
Yeah.
Third, for months, the United States has been working to secure a ceasefire in Gaza, to bring the hostages home, to create a path for peace and stability in the Middle East. 6 weeks ago, I laid out a detailed plan in writing. It was endorsed by the UN Security Council, the G7. That
Yeah, the
framework
plan
is
was
now agreed
stop
on
fighting.
by both Israel and Hamas. So I sent my team to the region to hammer out the details. These are difficult, complex issues. There's still gaps to close. We're making progress. The trend is
it's not
positive.
working.
And I'm determined to get this deal done and bring an end to this war, which should end now. Let me conclude where I began.
Okay.
We're the United States of America. We are the indispensable nation. Our leadership matters. Our partnerships matter. This moment matters. We must rise to meet it. With that,
Okay. Let's get
I'll
past the
take your
teleprompter.
questions.
Here we
I've been
go.
given a list of people to call on here. Reuters, Jeff Mason.
I've been given a list of people to call on.
Here we go.
Mr. President, your political future has hung over the NATO summit a little bit this week. Speaker Pelosi made a point of suggesting that your decision on whether to stay in the race was still open. George Clooney and a handful of lawmakers have called on you to step aside. Reuters is reporting tonight that UAW leadership is concerned about your ability to win.
Ooh.
UAW just endorsed me, but go ahead.
Thank you. My question for you is, how are you incorporating these developments into your decision to stay? And separately, what concerns do you have about Vice President Harris's ability to beat Donald Trump if she were at the top of the ticket?
Look, I wouldn't have picked Vice President Trump to be vice president. So I think she's not qualified to be president. So let's start there.
Shit.
Number one.
God damn.
The fact is that the consideration is that I think I'm the most qualified person to run for president. I beat him once, and I will beat him again. Secondly, the idea, I served in the
Vice
Senate a long
President
time.
Trump.
The idea that senators and congressmen running for office worry about the ticket is not unusual. And I might add, there are at least 5 presidents running or incumbent presidents who had lower numbers than I have now.
Wow. Damning with
Later
faint
in the
praise.
So there's a long way to go in this campaign. And so I'm just going to keep moving. And because look, I got more work to do. We got more work to finish. There's so much, we made so much progress. Think about it. Think about where we are economically relative to the rest of the world. Name me a world leader who wouldn't want to trade places with our economy. We created over 800,000 manufacturing jobs, 1.5 million. I mean, so things are moving. We got more to go. Working class people still need help. Corporate greed is still at large. Their prices, the corporate profits have doubled since the pandemic. They're coming down. And so I'm optimistic about where things are going.
Pandemic. Okay.
Danny Kemp, AFP.
Thanks. Thank you, Mr. President. I wanted to ask you about you mixed up Presidents Zelensky and Putin earlier today. You now have sort of your key allies, including the British Prime Minister, the President of France, the German Chancellor, having to step in and make excuses for you on that. And officials here are saying off the record that your decline has become noticeable. Hasn't this now, frankly, become damaging for America's standing in the world? Thank you.
Did you see any damage to our standing in my leading this conference?
Oh my God.
Have you seen a more successful conference?
Yes.
What do you think? And the Putin piece, I was talking about Putin, and I said, and now, at the very end, I said, here, I mean, Putin. I said, no, I'm sorry, Zelensky.
Yeah. We know.
And then I added 5 other names. Look, guys.
Oh my God.
The idea anybody suggests that we haven't had an incredibly successful conference.
No, nobody said that.
How many times did you hear
nobody asked
in that conference? I know it sounds too self-serving, but
what?
Other leaders, heads of state, in thanking me, saying the reason we're together is because of Biden.
Oh my God.
Because Biden did the following. Look, folks, this is well. Anyway,
Yes.
I thought
Can't
it was
finish
a
a thought.
successful conference I've attended in a long time.
Oh my
And
God.
find me a world leader who didn't think it was.
Oh, this is bad.
Next one. Nancy Cordes, CBS.
Thank you, Mr. President. You mentioned other instances in history where presidents have faced a challenge, but what makes this moment in history so unique is that it is not your enemies who are calling on you to reconsider your decision to stay in the race. It's your friends, supporters, people who think you've done a great job over the past 4 years. Have you spent time thinking about what it would mean for your legacy, which you've worked decades to build, if you stay in the
last thing
race,
everybody remembers is just a
despite the
doddering old
concerns that
man
voters say they
being
have,
insane on
and you
stage.
lose to someone who you yourself have argued is unfit to return to the Oval Office?
Well, look,
Waiting for
I'm not in this for my legacy.
horse
I'm
hockey.
in this to complete the job I started.
What job
As
is
you
that?
recall, understandably, many of you and many economists thought my initial initiatives that I put forward, can't do that, it's going to cause inflation, things are going to skyrocket, the debt's going to go up. What are you hearing now from mainstream economists?
I don't know.
16 economic Nobel laureates
Oh my God.
said I've done a hell of a job.
You done a hell of a
And
job.
under my plans so far and what's going to happen in the future if I'm reelected, that things are going to get much better. Our economy is growing. I was determined when I got elected to stop the trickle-down economic theory, that if the wealthy did very well, everybody else would do well. My dad was a well-read, decent guy. I don't remember much trickling down on his kitchen table.
Uh-oh.
Middle-class people and working-class people.
Breaking
need
news,
help.
at least from Ed Castiablo.
And so what happened is I decided to was able to implement as president.
Try to
what I
verify that,
believed
shall
when I
we?
was a senator.
I will look
And
into
that is that the way to build this economy is from the middle out and the bottom up. That way we grow the economy.
Keep in mind, last
And the
time
wealthy
this
still
happened, it
do
was
very well.
Ukraine.
They do fine.
That's true.
And guess what? Find me an economist, a mainstream economist who said we haven't done well.
Okay.
What have we
I'm
not
sure
done
there will
that
be.
isn't working right now? And so we got more to do, though. We got to finish the job. And by the way, I come from the corporate state of the world. Delaware has more corporations registered in Delaware than every other state in the nation combined.
Why
I'm
is
not
that?
corporate? But corporate profits have doubled since the pandemic. Doubled. It's time things get back in order a little bit.
You've had
It's
4 years to do
For
so.
example, if I'm reelected, we're going to make sure that rents are kept at 5% increase of corporate rents for apartments and the like and homes are limited to 5%. We're going to make a lot of
5%
changes that I've been talking about because we're going to continue to grow this economy. And by the way, I know, remember how I got so roundly criticized for being so pro-union, not labor, union.
Yeah, and the United
Guess
Auto
what?
Workers just said they're going to
I've
drop
been the most
people.
pro-union labor president in history. Not a joke. And
Not a
guess
joke.
what?
What?
We had the Treasury Department do a study. When unions do better, everybody does better.
Oh my God.
Everybody does better. And we talk about how, for example, remember when we talked about getting the computer chip industry back in the United States? It used to be.
Vice President
40% of the
Trump is
industry
already
we
number
invented
one
the
trending.
chip.
Oops. Oh, I didn't mean to do that. Sorry. I hit the wrong thing. Sorry.
Cheapest
Pardon me.
labor in the world. Send the product over there and import what the product was. And so what did I do? I was told not to go over to Europe. I mean, to Asia, including Europe, but Asia.
Including
I remember
Europe, but
going to
Asia, it's a little
South
bit different.
Korea, convincing them to invest
It's all the same.
$1 million in the United States to build computer chip factories.
Yeah.
And I asked why when they finally decided to do it. And the answer was because you have the safest economy in the world and you have the best workers in the world. So the whole idea here is we've invested, there's over $50 billion in investment in computer chip manufacturing just coming in the bean.
What was the
None of
question
you
he was
thought that
asked
would
again?
happen.
No idea.
That would happen. But it's
I'm not sure
happening.
he does either.
It's happening.
Oh my God,
It's
it's
going to grow
happening.
economies. All through, and by the way, red states and blue states. Matter of fact, there's as much.
He's
in red
got people
states as blue
yelling
states.
every
I've
talking
lived in
point in his
states.
ear right now,
So
doesn't
my
he?
generic point is that the idea that we can't continue to build and grow the economy, make it fairer. And like I said, from my standpoint, when the middle class does well, that's when the whole economy grows.
Wow.
Poor of a shot, the wealthy do well. But the wealthy got to start paying their taxes.
Okay.
Sir, you mentioned that your Vice President Kamala Harris would be ready to serve on day one. Can you elaborate on that? What is it about her attributes
Thank you,
and her
Peter Dam.
accomplishments over the last 4
Appreciate
years
you.
that
Hiya,
make
Dogcat
her
Fox.
ready
I'll get to the
serve on
Dogcat
day
Fox
one
later.
if
Appreciate
necessary?
it.
Excuse
First of
me,
all,
he
the
said
way
Vice
she's
President
handled
Trump.
the issue of freedom of women's bodies to have control over their bodies. Secondly, her ability to handle almost any issue on the board.
What?
This was a hell of a prosecutor.
What issue did she handle? Any issue on the board? Tell me about the
I wouldn't have
border.
picked her unless I thought she was qualified to be president. From the very beginning.
You didn't pick her
I made
because
no
of that.
bones about that.
No, you didn't.
She is qualified to be president.
No,
That's
well,
why I picked her.
I mean, the qualifications are what, 35 years old and a citizen of the United States. So there you
Felicia
go.
Schwartz,
That's what
Financial
we'll say.
Times.
Thank you, Mr. President. Presidency is the most straining job in the world, and it's 24/7. How can you say you'll be up for that next year, in 2 years, in 4 years, given the limits you've acknowledged that you have today?
Oh, boy. Uh-oh. He's waiting for his
I've
answer.
acknowledged I have.
Yeah.
There's been reporting that you've acknowledged that you need to go to bed earlier and your evening around 8.
That's not true.
Yes, it is.
It's true.
What I said was,
He said it to 7. What
Instead
the
of my every day
Oh my
starting at 7 and
God.
going to bed at midnight, it'd be smarter for me to pace myself a little more.
Oh,
And I said, for
Lord.
example, the
That's
8,
not true.
7, 6 stuff, instead of starting the fundraiser at 9 o'clock, start at 8 o'clock. People get to go home by 10 o'clock.
Oh, my God.
That's what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about. And if
What
you
is
look at my
that for?
schedule since I made that stupid mistake in the campaign in the debate,
Which one?
I mean, my schedule has been full bore. I've done where's Trump been? Riding around in his golf cart, filling out his scorecard.
He's
before
a
he hits the ball?
civilian.
I mean, look.
What
he's
he
done
also
virtually nothing.
rallies and everything else.
And I have, I don't know how many, don't hold me to it, roughly 20 major events. Some with thousands of people showing up.
Wow. And?
And so I just think it's better. I always have an inclination, whether I was playing sports or doing politics, just to keep going, not stop. I just got to just pace myself a little more. Pace myself. in the next debate, I'm not going to be traveling into 15 time zones a week before.
You weren't.
Anyway, that's what
You
it was
were
about.
at Camp David.
That's what it was about. And by the way, even with that, I love my staff.
Oh my
But
God.
they
Oh,
add things.
What?
my God.
Add things all the time.
What?
Very add.
What?
I'm catching hell from my wife
What?
for that. Anyway.
Stop.
What are you talking? Oh my God.
Um,
15
Hey,
time
what's the
zones.
style at the time?
He spent, yeah, this was a
sorry,
style. He spent 6 days
Miller,
prepping for
Associated
the
Press.
debate. He wasn't traveling 15 time zones.
Thank you, Mr. President. Two questions for you. First, on the NATO summit, President Zelensky, in your meeting with him, he pressed you to lift your limitations on the Ukrainian use of American weapons, saying that, in his public remarks afterwards, saying that Ukraine cannot win the war unless those limitations are lifted. Are you reconsidering your position on that? And then secondly, following up on Felicia's question there, leaders of your own party have said that they're not worried about that debate. They're worried about the next bad night and the bad night after that. How can you reassure the American people that you are up to the task and that there won't be more bad nights at a debate stage or somewhere else?
First thing about Zelensky asking for the ability to strike deep into Russia.
Strike deep.
We've allowed Zelensky to use American weapons in the near term and the near abroad into Russia.
Yeah.
Whether or not he should be attacked. For example, should Zelensky, he's not. If he had the capacity to strike Moscow, strike the Kremlin, would that make sense? It wouldn't. The question is, what's the best use of the weaponry he has, and the weaponry we're getting to him? I've gotten a more long-range capacity, as well as defensive capacity. And so our military is where I'm following the advice of my commander-in-chief, you're the commander-in-chief of the military, as well as Secretary of Defense and our intelligence people. And we're making a day-to-day basis on what they should and shouldn't, how far they should go in. That's a logical thing to do. Second question related to
Bad nights, sir. How can you reassure the American people that you won't have more bad nights, whether they be on a debate stage or it's a matter of foreign policy?
Well, I tell you what, the best way to assure them is the way I assure myself.
Oh, yeah.
And that is, am I getting the job done?
Am
I getting the job done?
The job done.
Can you name me somebody who's got more major piece of legislation passed in 3.5 years? I created 2,000 jobs just last week. So
you created 2,000 jobs?
I can't get the job done. That's
Are they federal jobs?
That I shouldn't be doing it.
Maybe.
But there's no indication of that yet. None. Who I got here?
I don't know. Do you know? Hey, Matt Barnes. Thanks so much.
Merrick, Husky Radio.
Thank you, Mr. President. How are you?
I'm well.
Here you are.
The elections in the US have consequences around the world. You have pretty high standing in Europe. I just asked President Macron about you, and he said we are happy to have him as the President of the United States. But there is a concern. Many people in Poland and across Europe are worried that the former president may win the election. And there's a lot of concern that Donald Trump may weaken NATO, stop supporting Ukraine, or push Ukraine to give up territories to Russia.
They're correct.
And yourself was warning just 2 minutes ago about it.
Okay.
So my question is, do you think that Europe will be left on its own if Donald Trump wins the election? And what's your advice to European leaders?
Well, at least be honest about what Trump's objection to NATO member states was. It was them not contributing their fair share.
No, they can't be honest about it.
How can I say this without sounding too self-serving?
I don't know, Joe. Do you have the capacity? Matt Barnes, thank you again. Being well-spoken is only part of the job. That's a big part, though. Thank you.
What I hear them say is, you've got to win. You can't let this guy come forward. It'd be a disaster.
Again.
It'd be a disaster. I mean, I think he said in one of his rallies, don't hold me to this, recently, where NATO, I just learned about NATO or something to that effect. Foreign policy has never been his strong point.
You need some proof of
He
that.
seems to have an affinity to people who are authoritarian. That worries, as I tell you from Poland, that worries Europe. That worries Poland. And nobody, including the people of Poland, think that if he wins in Ukraine, he's going to stop in Ukraine, that that's going to be the end of it. And so what I can say is, I think I'm the best qualified person to do the job, to make sure that Ukraine does not fall, that Ukraine succeeds, that the European alliance stays strong. You may recall, no one was talking about Finland joining NATO.
No
I
one?
remember talking to Putin right after we got elected in Geneva. And he was talking about what we should do. We couldn't be in Eastern Europe, et cetera.
What?
And I said, you're looking for the Finlandization of Ukraine. Because you're going to get the NATOization of Finland.
Finlandization?
And about 4 weeks later, I got a call. No, that's not true.
What?
Probably 5 months later, from the president of Finland, could he come and see me?
What the fuck?
In my office. I invited him to the Oval Office. We sat
Thank you,
down and
Michael
talked. He
Caruso.
said he wanted to join NATO. Could I help? And I did. It wasn't automatic. And then I got a call from the Swedes.
Uh-oh.
I beg your pardon? And so
What
Finland joined NATO. 800-mile border is a significant, and they're already allies, but they weren't part of NATO. And you heard, I think you heard, maybe, I can't recall what he said in public there in our closed meeting, but he wouldn't mind it being repeated.
Matt Barnes, I'm sure in his imagination he has.
We decided
at least.
in Finland, the people of Finland.
He probably talked to the
decided they
president
had
of
to be part of
Poland
NATO.
who's
Was
been
in our
dead for
interest
10 years or
because
something.
of the joint ability to be together, to dissuade any attack on Finland. And the same thing with Sweden.
Who's going to attack Finland?
It took a lot of selling to some folks, particularly Turkey and other places, to agree to the expansion. But it expanded. And we're a hell of a lot stronger because of it. We're more secure because of it. And by the way, I was able to get 50 other nations, 50, to support Ukraine. 50.
All by yourself?
We're able to bring about a coalition between
All by
of
myself.
Europe and
All
Asia,
by
Japan and South Korea.
myself.
I just met with, we talked about AUKUS,
Joe
and we talked about
Biden
the relationship between Australia, New Zealand, Japan, South Korea, the United States. We're making the world safer and stronger because
about
we have to
Afghanistan.
deal with the new arrangement that exists in the world.
How much safer is
The Cold War
Afghanistan now?
over. The post-war era is over. What is going to replace it? And I respectfully suggest I have a pretty good idea what that should be. I've convinced a lot of people to follow it, and we're just going to get stronger. David
What's wrong?
Sanger.
Okay.
Where's it?
Thank you, Mr. President.
Be nice, David.
Mr. President, the NATO declaration that was issued yesterday was very notable because it described China as a decisive enabler of the war in Ukraine for its provision of critical goods to the Russians. That's part of a broader partnership that seems to have cemented in place in the past 2 or 3 years. I think one that you were a little bit doubtful of when we asked you about it some time ago. So I'd be interested to know whether you have a strategy now of trying to interrupt the partnership between China and Russia.
Oh my
And
gosh.
whether or not in a second term you would pursue that, if you could describe that strategy to us. And along the way, could you also tell us whether you think, just to follow up on Felicia's question,
You know where you're at.
that if you were in a room with Vladimir Putin again, the way you were 3 years ago, or with President Xi, that a few years from now, you will be able to go negotiate with them, handle them one-on-one?
Well, the first part of the question is, we discussed and I raised in the NATO summit, and others raised, the future of China's involvement, what they're going to do.
What's your strategy?
What they're doing with Russia in terms of accommodating, facilitating them. They're getting access to additional, they're not supplying weapons themselves. They're supplying mechanisms for them to be able to get weapons.
Not weapons directly yet.
And China's position is basically, and I've spent more time with Xi Jinping than any world leader has, over 90 hours since being vice president all the way through, for real.
For real.
And by the way, I handed all my notes. But my point is that she believes that China is a large enough market that they can entice any country, including European countries, to invest there in return for commitments from Europe to do A, B, C, or D, or not to do certain things. What's happened is we had a long discussion about what we have to make clear. China has to understand that if they are supplying Russia with information and capacity, along with working with North Korea and others to help Russia in armament,
which they are sideways.
They're not going to benefit economically as a consequence of that by getting the kind of investment they're looking for. And so, for example, we're in a situation where we've reestablished direct contact with China after that. Remember the balloon, quote unquote, going down, and all of a sudden things came to an end?
It was a balloon.
We set up a new mechanism. There's a direct line between Xi and me, and our military has direct access to one another, and they contact one another when we have problems.
Don't just king me, Xi me.
Is that we have to make sure
you've got a direct line to Xi. Is that new information? Did we know that?
Dude, what the fuck is he talking about?
Both the Pacific Basin as well as Europe, and as it relates to Russia.
What is your strategy to dissuade China's support of Russia?
And so for example, if you want to invest in China, as you know this area really well. If you want to invest in China, you have to have a 51% Chinese owner. You have to make sure that you do by their rules. And you don't have the authority, and that you have to provide all access to all the data and information you have. There was a while there, as you recall, the last administration and other administrations, where the access to that market was enticing enough to get companies to come in because they had access to over 1 billion people in the market.
What is your strategy to dissuade the Chinese-Russian alliance?
On the market. And
I talked
so
to
they were doing it, but that got curtailed when we started saying we're going to play by the same rules. For example, the idea they don't abide by the international rules related to subsidizing products by the government funding. So guess what? They're not going to be able to export their electric vehicles to the United States without a significant tariff. Others are doing the same thing around the world.
Did you just say Trump?
But it is a concern. It is a concern that you have both China.
Matt Barnes, the answer is yes, because they have no choice but to put him up in public, or else they have to concede.
Not necessarily.
They painted themselves into a corner. That's my answer. Sinatra?
Looking to figure out how they can have impact.
Sorry, I'm listening to this.
Interrupt that impact?
Yes, I do, but I'm not prepared to talk about the detail of it in public.
Yes and no.
I think you'll see that
listening to his earpiece, you can his eyes go down like that. Listening,
are going to be curtailing.
That's a reflexive thing the brain does. When you're like listening to something. You're concentrating on something.
In China.
Oh my God!
As long as China continues.
I don't know if they would do this to try to prove it because they know it's not going to turn out well.
To Russia, in terms of being able.
I just think they don't have any choice. They have to put it up in public, or they're conceding there's a problem.
Help them in as a consequence of that.
They really have no choice. If there is some four-dimensional chess of trying to use these events
the other thing that we talked a lot about,
get him to be dumped out or get more support against him.
And there was, I didn't hear any.
They don't have a choice otherwise.
I can't swear that everyone agreed because not everyone got to talk about it. but we haven't. We need a new industrial policy in the West.
Okay.
For example.
Okay. Example.
We talked about how both the EU as well as NATO has to be able to begin to build their own munition capacity.
What
has to be able
has to be
generate
allowed?
their own capacity to provide for weapons and the ability to.
Wait, EU and NATO don't produce their own
Some of
weapons?
us, how we had fallen behind in
not
the
know?
West in terms of the ability to construct new.
I wasn't aware the
new
EU was
weaponry,
restricted
new-
from building their
new-
own munitions.
Everything from vehicles to weapon systems. And so one of the things that came out of this was we're going to be meeting again with a number of my colleagues, my European colleagues, is what do we do to increase the capacity of the West, particularly in Europe and Japan, to be able to generate the kind of ability to produce their own weapon systems.
I don't know, threaten to remove NATO support unless they fulfill their 2%
It's the same, that's
requirement
what
for joining NATO?
Russia's trying to figure out. That they went to China and they didn't get the weapons, but then they went to North Korea. But we're going to be in a position where the West is going to become the industrial base for to be able to the ability to have all the defensive weapons that we need. That was a discussion as well.
So you want to make America more of an arms dealer to the world than
Be
NATO
ready
is?
to go deal with Putin and Xi 2 or 3 years from now.
I'm ready to deal with them now and 3 years from now.
Okay.
He's listening again. Look at those eyes when they go
Like I
down
said,
and to the right like that.
I'm dealing with Xi right now and direct contact with him. I have no good reason to talk to Putin right now. There's not much that he is prepared to do in terms of accommodating any change in his behavior. And but there isn't any world leader I'm not prepared to deal with. But I understand that the generic point is Putin ready to talk? I'm not ready to talk to Putin unless Putin's ready to change his behavior. And the idea, look, Putin's got a problem.
Yeah.
First of all, in this war that he is supposedly have won, and by the way, I think, don't hold me to the exact number, but I think Russia had 17.3% of Ukraine that they've conquered. Now it's 17.4. I mean, in terms of percentage of territory.
It's a game of inches.
They've not been very successful.
Yeah.
They've caused horrible damage and loss of life. But they've also lost over 350,000 troops.
Yeah, and they're willing to make
killed
those
and wounded.
sacrifices. It's
There are
siege
over a
mentality.
million people, particularly young people with technical capability, leaving Russia because they see no future there. They've got a problem. But what they do have control of is they
I don't
are
think
very
Russia's
good
the
at
one with the problem
controlling
here, Joe.
and running the public outcry.
Yeah, well,
that
Russia
relates
can
to how
afford
they
to keep
use
throwing bodies against the
mechanisms to
Ukraine.
communicate with people.
Ukraine's
They lie like
can't
hell to their
sustain it.
constituencies. They lie like hell about what's going on. And so the idea that we're going to be able to fundamentally change Russia in the near term is not likely. But one thing for certain, if we allow Russia to succeed in Ukraine, they're not stopping in Ukraine. I recommend, I know you know this because you've written about it. Read Putin's speech after they moved in.
Putin's
what it
speech?
was all about.
Putin speech.
It wasn't about just, anyway.
Matt Barnes
Read
asking
the
when we hear
objectives.
anecdote about grandfather Ambrose Finnegan.
Anyway, but so I think that I'm prepared to talk to any leader who wants to talk.
Something about his
including
son.
Putin called me and wanted to talk. Last time I talked to Putin was trying to get him to work on an arms control agreement related to nuclear weapons in space. That didn't go very far. So my point is, I'm
There's a
prepared to
point.
talk to anybody, but I don't see any inclination. There is an inclination on the part of the Chinese to keep in contact with me. Because they're
There
not sure
isn't?
where
Then
this
why
all
have a
goes.
direct line? What would you?
And look what's happened in Asia.
What?
We have strengthened the
You don't have any
Asian
contact with
Pacific area
China?
more than anyone else has. We
You just said
we
you
just
did.
put together with.
He says that
today,
China's got no
we had-
inclination to have
I
contact
brought
with
on-
us
I
or
asked
something.
our NATO allies that we bring on the group from the South Pacific, Australia, New Zealand, Japan, Australia. I already mentioned Australia.
Oh,
and I met
Lord.
twice now, I think, with the 14 leaders of the Pacific Island nations. And we've slowed down what's going on there. We've slowed down China's reach.
Have
There's
you?
a lot of work to
How?
do. This is a moving target, and I don't take it lightly.
Uh-huh.
Sam from NPR.
NPR. Oh boy, a friendly outlet.
Thank you, Mr. President. Asma Khalid with NPR. I have two questions. Earlier, you spoke about the ceasefire plan between Israel and Hamas. We're now looking at 10 months of war, and I'm curious if there's anything that you feel personally you wish you would have done differently over the course of the war. And then secondly, if I may, I wanted to ask you about your presidential campaign. I remember covering your campaign in 2020, and there was a moment where you referred to yourself as a, quote, bridge candidacy, a transition to a younger generation of leaders. I want to understand what changed.
God,
Two things.
good,
So let's
good
go
question.
back to when you talked about would I have changed anything that's happening with Israel and the Palestinians and the Palestinian movement. The answer is, as you recall, from the very beginning, I went to Israel, but I also got immediate contact with al-Sisi in Egypt. I met with the King of Jordan. I met with most of the Arab leaders to try to get a consensus going as to what had to be done to deal with getting more aid and food and medicine into the Gaza Strip. And we pushed it really hard. And Israel occasionally was less than cooperative, number one. The Israeli War Cabinet, I've been dealing with Israel since Golda Meir. Some of the reporters around here cover me all the time have heard me say this. The first time I met with Golda Meir, I sat across from her at her desk, and her assistant was Rabin sitting next to me. That's how far back I go. I know Israel well, and I support Israel. But this war cabinet is one of the most conservative war cabinets in the history of Israel. And there's no ultimate answer other than a two-state solution here. And so what was able to be done,
good luck with that.
The plan I put together was it would be a process for a two-state solution. And we get the Arab nations, particularly from Egypt all the way to Saudi Arabia, to be in a position where they would cooperate in the transition so that they could keep the peace in Gaza without Israeli forces
Gaza
staying
doesn't
in Gaza.
want peace.
The question has been from the beginning, what's the day after in Gaza? And the day after in Gaza has to be...
Day after in Gaza is rubble at this point.
No occupation by
nobody
Israel
there
on the
wants
Gaza
peace.
Strip, as well as the ability for us to get in and out as rapidly as you can, all that's needed there. I've been disappointed that some of the things that I've put forward have not succeeded as well, like the port reattached from Cyprus. I was hopeful that would be more successful. But that's why when I went to Israel immediately after the massacres that occurred at the hands of Hamas, the one thing I said to the Israelis, and I met with the War Cabinet and with Bibi, don't make the same mistake America made after bin Laden.
There's
no need to occupy anywhere. Go after the people who did the job. You may recall, I still get criticized for it, but I was totally opposed to the occupation and trying to unite Afghanistan. Once we got bin Laden, we should have moved on, because it was not no one's ever going to unite that country. I've been over every inch of that, not every inch, the entirety from the poppy fields all the way to the north. I said, don't make the same mistake we made. Don't think that's what you should be doing, is doubling down. We'll help you find the bad guys, Sinwar and company.
Well, I can't wait to do fact checkers on his positions regarding Afghanistan.
The weapons they needed.
Right.
I'm not providing them 2,000-pound bombs. They cannot be used in Gaza or any populated area without causing great human tragedy and damage. But remember what happened when you had the attack on Israel with rockets and ballistic missiles.
Intercontinental.
I was able to unite the Arab nations as well as Europe, and nothing happened. Nothing got hurt. It sent an incredible lesson to what was going on from the Middle East. So there's a lot of things.
Iran's strike was basically performative.
The Israelis to
you
do.
didn't stop
The
that.
bottom line is we have a chance now. It's time to end this war. Doesn't mean walk away from going after Sinwar and Hamas. And if you notice, you know better than most, there is a growing dissatisfaction on the West Bank from the Palestinians about Hamas. Hamas is not popular now.
Wow.
And so there's a lot of moving parts. I just have to keep moving to make sure that we get as much done as we can toward a ceasefire.
Matt Barnes says, not to sound conspiratorial, but I feel like this is Alice Cooper and Hunter S. Biden versus Obama and the DNC. After Sinatra. And before I go, I met with the chief of the cannibals who ate Uncle Rosie.
Then again, they're better
Thank you,
than a lot
Matt.
of other
Appreciate it
people
very
here,
much.
too. But anyway,
dirty people.
Bridge candidacy
Yeah,
in
the second part of
2020.
the
You
question.
referred to yourself as being a bridge candidate for a younger, fresher generation of Democratic leaders, and I wanted to know what changed.
what changed was the gravity of the situation I inherited in terms of the economy, our foreign policy, and domestic division. And I think I won't put words in anybody's mouth.
Okay.
Most presidential historians give me credit
I won't
for
put
having accomplished more than most any president since Johnson and maybe before that to get major pieces of legislation passed. And what I realized was my long time in the Senate had equipped me to have the wisdom to know how to deal with the Congress to get things done. We got more major legislation passed that no one thought would happen. And I want to finish it, to get that finished. If tomorrow, if we had a circumstance where there was a lineup and I hadn't inherited what I did, and we just moved things along. Anyway, it's going to change.
Last question.
Last question.
Haley Bull, Scripps. Or no, Josh Weingrove, I'm sorry, was the next one. I'll do 2 more questions.
2 more, okay.
Thank you, Mr. President. Many of your colleagues, Democrats in the Hill, are watching tonight as they assess what they want to say about your candidacy. I'm wondering how you're thinking of this right now. It seems like your answer is clear, but they're watching how things go tonight, tomorrow in Michigan, next week in Texas and Nevada. Are you thinking that way about how the next week or 2 goes would inform your...
Am I using that way, you said?
Are you thinking that way about how the next 2 weeks go? Will that affect your decision, or are you fully determined on running in November as the party's
That guy's not in a barbershop
I'm determined on
quartet. It's a
running,
shame.
But I think it's important that I allay fears by let them see me out there.
Yeah.
Let me see them out. For the longest time it was, Biden's not prepared to sit with us unscripted. Biden's not prepared to, anyway. And so what I'm doing is, and I've been doing, I've been 20 major events from Wisconsin to North Carolina to demonstrate that I'm going out.
You said
in
anyway a
areas where
lot.
I think we can win, where we can persuade people to move our way, or people are already there. And then look, the other thing is, we have the most extensive campaign organization of anybody's had in a long, long time. We have well over 1,000 volunteers knocking on doors, making phone calls, making tens of thousands of phone calls.
Just
We have
1,000?
headquarters. I forget exactly how many. I want to cite a number and then find out I'm off. But we have scores of headquarters.
Scores of
in all
headquarters.
the toss-up states.
Just 1,000.
We're organized. We're moving, and that's awful hard to replace in the near term.
What?
And so, and here's the other thing.
Okay.
What?
I was in the Senate a long time.
Yeah, you were.
I'm very proud of what I've done in the Senate.
Okay.
I was chairman of the Foreign Relations Committee for a long time, and I was chairman or ranking member and chairman of the Judiciary Committee.
Okay.
I'm going to be going down to the Johnson Library Anyway, I'm going to be going around making the case of the things that I think we have to finish.
At the Johnson
And how
Library?
we can't afford to lose
He's got to whip out
what
that
we've
Johnson.
done or backslide on civil rights, civil liberties, women's rights. There's that little button we have.
That little button.
Control guns, not girls. I mean, the
What?
idea we're sitting around, this would
Oh, is
come
that a
almost so
button
good
they
as
have for their
well.
campaign?
We're sitting around. More children are killed by a bullet
Yeah.
than any other cause of death.
Why are you yelling
The
at him?
United States of America.
Yeah.
What the hell are we doing?
I don't know.
What are we doing?
What?
We got a candidate saying,
Ask
promising,
Chicago.
"Hey, don't worry, I'm not going to do anything. I'm not going to do anything." You got a Supreme Court that is what you might call the most conservative court in American history.
Uh-huh.
This is ridiculous. There's so much we can do still, and I'm determined to get it done. It's about freedom.
Oh,
And
it
by the
is.
way,
Yeah.
I'll end this. Well, I'm not going to do that. Haley has to come up too. But
oh boy,
I remember I made
anecdote
a
time
speech on democracy in Philadelphia at Independence Hall.
Okay.
And I'm not being critical, just observing. The bulk of the press, what the hell is he talking about that for? Democracy. You did. Democracy is not an issue. Democracy is not an issue. Except the polling data showed 60% of the people knew I was right, thought I was right. I'm not asking you a question. You don't have to answer, obviously. But do you think our democracy is under siege?
What's going
Based on
on?
this court? Do you think democracy
is
is under siege
this
based on
supposed to be like
Project
a campaign
2025?
rally?
Do you
Oh,
think
well, I mean,
he
it,
means
I
what
mean,
he says when he
it's a
says
de
he's
facto
gonna
campaign
do away
event,
with civil
effectively,
service?
sure.
Eliminates the Department of
Now
Education?
he's turning into something adversarial with the
I mean,
questioner. This is just bizarre.
We've never been here before. And
We've
that's
been
the other
waiting
reason
for it.
why I didn't, you say, hand off to another generation.
What?
I've got to finish this job.
Why do you
Gotta
have to
finish
finish
this
it?
job because there's so much at stake.
That's why.
We've had some discussions over the past few days with your press secretary about the question of health exams. And you said you take a cognitive test every day in this job. Are you open to taking another physical or test before the election? Governor Whitmer of Michigan, for instance, said it wouldn't hurt to take a test.
Well, look, two things.
Okay.
One, I've taken 3 significant and intense neurological exams by a neurologist. In this case, it was in February.
Worst time.
In good shape.
Oh.
Although I do have a little problem with my left foot because it's not as sensitive because I broke my foot and didn't wear the boot.
What? My left
But
foot?
I'm good. I'm tested every single day.
Oh, God.
On my
This test-
neurological capacity, the decisions I make every day. You talk to my staff. All of you talk to my staff.
Oh, I'm sure your
Sometimes
staff are
my
going to like.
talks a lot. But the fact of the matter is, I don't think you have them telling you that all the major ideas we've undertaken haven't been in part initiated by me. I remember when the staff, I said, I'm going to go to South Korea. We're going to get the chip. What are you doing?
Chocolate
I'm
chip,
gonna
what?
get Japan and
The
Korea
chip? What?
back
What
together
chip?
again after essentially having hostilities toward one another since the end of World War II. I'm going to move and see that we can expand it. You know, the only thing age
You
does
finish a thought?
is help you with it. It creates a little bit of wisdom if you pay attention.
Oh, Lord.
And so the point I'm making is, I think it's
sleepy.
important that
I'm sleepy. He's sleepy.
If the neurologist tells me he thinks I need another exam, and by the way, I've laid every bit of the record out. Hadn't hidden a thing.
Oh, God!
You ought to ask Trump for his.
Jesus!
I laid it all out.
This is just
day, I'm surrounded
sad.
by good docs. If they think there's a problem, I promise you, or even if they don't think it's a problem, they think I should have a neurological exam again, I'll do it.
Oh, you wouldn't be getting neurological exams every day if they didn't think you needed them.
No matter what I did, no one's
Wait,
going to be
nobody's
satisfied.
suggesting you take another
Did you have
neurological
7 docs?
exam?
Did you have 2? Who'd you have? Did you do this? How many times? So I am not opposed if my doctors tell me I should have another neurological exam, I'll do it. But that's where I am. Haley Bull, Scripps.
Okay, Haley.
Thank you, Mr. President. You said you're making decisions on a day-to-day basis when it comes to support for Ukraine. Does that mean you have not closed the door on further considering lifting restrictions for U.S.-made weapons inside Russia? And if I may, your convention is coming up where your delegates are pledged to make you the official nominee. If they have second thoughts, are they free to vote their conscience?
Oh.
Obviously, they're free to do whatever they want, but I get overwhelming support.
Yeah.
Overwhelming support.
See how that lasts after this.
I won. I forget how many votes I won in the primary.
Of course you did.
Overwhelming. And so tomorrow, if all of a sudden I show up at the convention, everybody says we want somebody else, that's the democratic process.
Convention's not till September, Joe.
They vote for someone else?
Or August, pardon me.
Sure. Look. I'll end this with this. I served in the Senate a long time.
Yeah, you told us that already.
I understand the impetus of candidates running for local office.
Local office?
And whether they think the top if they can help them or not. In my state of Delaware, which was a very, at least it was a red state when I started. In terms of we now talk red and blue.
We now talk red and blue?
I don't recall most of the Democratic presidents winning my state when I was a candidate. The truth of the matter is I understand the self-interest of every candidate. If they think that,
they're only concerned to themselves, not for the country or the party.
They're going to run away.
Okay.
I get it. But so far, go and look at the polling data in their states. Look at the in-depth, and by the way, I think you'd all acknowledge, and you're all experts. I'm not being solicitous about the president. You're experts on this stuff.
Are they?
How accurate does anybody think the polls are these days? I can give you a series of polls where you have likely voters.
You just said look at the polls in those states, and now you're saying the validity of those polls are questionable?
The bottom line is all the polling data right now.
Look at the polls. They're not accurate, man.
Because the campaign really hadn't even started. I mean, it hadn't started in earnest yet.
You can't even remember where he is from one state to the next.
After Labor Day.
Are you kidding me?
A lot can happen.
This is bad.
But I think I'm the best I believe I'm the best qualified to govern.
You think you believe.
To win. But there are other people who could beat Trump too.
Oh,
but it's
really?
Start from scratch.
So you
and we talk about.
So you are the best, but there are other people that could do it.
We're not doing bad. We got about $220 million in the bank.
What?
We're doing well. So with that, you have any want to follow up on any of that? You just
Yes. You earlier explained confidence in your vice president.
Yes.
If your team came back and showed you data that she would fare better against former President Donald Trump, would you reconsider your decision to stay in the race?
No, unless they came back and said, there's no way you can win.
Okay.
What? Me.
What?
No one's saying that.
No one's saying that? What?
Okay.
This ends tonight's press conference.
Oh, we have a staffer stepping in. Oh, is he gonna walk off? Is he gonna keep taking questions? The staff want him off the stage.
Earlier, you misspoke in your opening answer. You referred to Vice President Harris as Vice President Trump. Right now, Donald Trump is using that to mock your age and your memory. How
Here we
do you
go.
combat that criticism from tonight?
Listen to him.
What?
This concludes tonight's press conference. Thank you, everybody.
Listen to him?
Thanks, everyone.
Oh my God, that was an absolute disaster. Absolute disaster. That might have been worse than the debate. I mean, the debate was bad enough, but then, Trump wasn't really doing himself many favors either in that. But of course, everybody was there to see how Biden would perform. The interview with Stephanopoulos was pretty bad, but yeah, this was, and given how infrequent his public press conferences are, I think somebody put the numbers up on a show I saw yesterday or something where they put up the numbers of how many full-on public press conferences presidents have done since Bush up through Biden. and Biden was in the low double digit, like 14 or something, whereas every other president prior had into the 30s, 40s, or otherwise. I think this did more damage than the debate. I mean, every successive event, especially something like this where he has no script, he's just got his earpiece, and you can see his eyes going down to the right, which means he's listening to somebody. And even then, he can't give out a coherent answer. He did fine. I mean, I'm speaking in relative terms. He did relatively fine in the comments leading up to the questions with the teleprompter. But as soon as that teleprompter went bye-bye.
Monkey just tweeted out, suddenly Biden has a problem with polls ending early.
I know, right? It's like look at the polls in those states. By the way, don't believe those poll numbers. Like, what the? Thank you, Frosted Glass. For fuck's sake, he sounds like Boomhauer at 10% speed.
Dude, he does.
Thank you, Frosted Glass. Also, I owe somebody a dog cat fox. So,
Wowie, wow.
Oh, there's a very sultry P-Dog Night dog cat fox.
Yeah, that was a little breathy.
I know. I have several very breathy.
Off.
Yeah, the ones that I've gotten from some of my other viewers, I think they took their cues from P-Dog because they're all very,
Wowie, wow.
That kind of thing, Or
Wowie, wow.
That one wasn't as bad.
Yeah, I know. But anyway, all right. So Sinatra, your summation and thoughts of the press conference.
As the kids say, we are cooked. Dude, we are so fucked. It's not even funny.
The conversation that needs to be happening now, and I'm surprised to say it, but Michael Moore, of all people, came out the other day. And I can't quote him directly, unfortunately, but he effectively said the question shouldn't be whether or not Biden is ready for another 4 years. It's whether or not he should spend another 4 days as president. Because remember, guys, this is the person who is the commander-in-chief and executive of this country. And as we know, all world emergencies, national crises, etc., all such events wait until sunrise the next day before happening. Once 8:00 p.m. on the East Coast hits, everybody's like, "Oh, we got to wait for Joe to wake up. Let's put aside our earthquakes, our wars, our threats to national security. Those can wait until the president is in fine fettle by 8 a.m. the next day."
Harry Sisson, that
yes, the Biden influencer of note. Yes. What about Harry?
20 minutes ago tweeted out, a lot of people owe President Biden an apology right now.
For what? Covering for him for the last 3.5 years? Yeah, probably. Propping him up against all evidence to the contrary that he was fit to serve? Yeah, probably. His staff, CNN in particular, other outlets. I get the most morbid entertainment of tweeting back to Chris Cillizza his own headlines decrying Republicans for questioning Joe Biden's age and cognition back in 2021 and so on. And now, only now has Chris Cillizza seen the light. Oh man, everybody got red pilled with that debate. Oh, all of a sudden it's like, oh, what? Joe Biden can't function? Yeah, you guys, it just happened today. It really did just happen today. Just now, only now, and everybody's acting like I just saw. it was the weirdest thing on. It's where Segar and Crystal Ball went off to start their own deal on, I think, Breaking Points or whatever on YouTube, and they interviewed Brian Stelter. It was either today or yesterday. They had Brian Stelter on, like, "Hey Brian, so you wrote an article about the media covering up for Joe Biden's mentality." While you were at CNN, I mean, credit to him for coming onto a show where he knew it was going to be adversarial, and he obviously had plenty of his own garbage to deal with. But it was bizarre to watch Brian Stelter try to act at least in part now that somehow he was just, oh, I know, what happened at the time? What went wrong at the time? Oh, we were just sort of, it was awkward as hell. But all these guys are coming back. They're all thankfully, some of them, not enough of them, are being held to account for their contribution to bamboozling not only themselves, but playing into this willful delusion of the Democratic Party and whatever side of the electorate that wanted to believe otherwise, that Joe Biden was completely perfectly functional and sharp at everything else all these years. It's just, it's so stupid. It is so stupid.
This is so bad. This is very bad.
So next moves, what's the fallout from this, do you think? Short term.
Hide him. Hide him. Do not put him out in public for at least a week.
They can't, though. They can't. They've painted themselves. This is the problem they brought themselves to. They put up a guy who is incapable, and they have him paired with a vice president who is incompetent, and nobody has any particular liking for. Well, the Democrats right now, those that can afford to speak out, that are in retirement mode anyway, like Nancy Pelosi and elsewise, they can say something mildly more definitive about their opinion. Those Democrats that are operating in more conservative states, they have some more cover to come out and be more outspoken. Otherwise, other Democrats are going to, the majority of Democrats, I think, barring their absolutely, like I say, it would take Barack Obama coming out and saying something, or even the rumor that he contacted Biden and said something, for anybody else to feel comfortable coming out in the mainstream Democratic Party. They don't, there's no political upside to making any comment about Biden right now, one way or the other. You wait to see which way the wind blows with the party. And the party right now is represented by the upper echelon, specifically Obama, because we know that Obama is still in play because George Clooney called Obama before he posted his op-ed. Obama is really running the Democratic Party from the shadows. And it's going to take him or someone that is seen as his approved proxy or something coming out and suggesting that Joe needs to step down. Other than that, yeah, I don't know. His inner circle and his family certainly aren't helping anything. And apparently they're the only ones he listens to. Thank you, Matthew James. Anyways, count 6. So there's only 6? Really? I would have thought there'd be more.
Felt like a lot more.
Yeah, I'm surprised it wasn't a double digit. But okay, if you say so, I'll take your word for it. You're not a pollster, so I can believe you. You see?
Yes, exactly. Unless I agree with you, then I do believe you.
Yeah. All right. Any closing thoughts, Sinatra, and or anything you'd like to plug or give shout outs to, etc., before we wrap up here?
I would like to give a shout out to Scribe for having me on his illustrious channel.
Well,
and AAA tomorrow on the Silent Sin at 5:30.
Yep. So look up the Silent Sin on YouTube, everybody, and check out Sinatra on the Twitters.
That's a fun time over there.
At Sinatra_says, capital S's in both instances. Jeanette E. Hellis, thank you so much. That Kamala comment was so bad, I would have left if I was vice president. It was so horrible.
He pretty much just said, she's a dipshit.
Yeah, that was just, just on sympathy alone, they'll probably give Kamala the spot. Just like, well,
yeah, they might.
He really threw you under the bus there. We really have no way of not extending you some sympathy. I don't know what their move is now. I really don't.
No idea.
Yeah, everybody's going to be looking to Obama. Everybody's going to be looking to the Democratic leadership after this, day after day. They can try to downplay it. They can try to ignore it or sugarcoat it. KJP over in the press office, she can try. It's not going to work. There's too much. It's the snowball is headed down the hill, and it's not getting any smaller. Like I said, the only question is at what point does the pressure from the inside become so much that even Biden can't deny it and he drops out? Because like I say, every day that he stays in the race, every day that he embarrasses himself and the party keeps propping him up, the more damage is done to the Democrats, the more damage is done to the chances of the Democrats even having a chance against Trump in the election and depriving any qualified candidate from airtime and fundraising. But anyway, everybody, I'm going to call it here. I want to thank Sinatra Says very much for joining me at the last minute for this. We did the debate over on his channel when it happened, and that was fun.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm sure we'll have more of these as time goes on, unless Joe decides to drop out. As for myself, in about 20 minutes on this channel will be TED Excellence, where I hadn't really planned it that way. But the subject tonight is how to spot authoritarianism and choose democracy.
Oh, that'll be fun.
I know. I'm sure that the through line throughout that entire presentation won't be Trump bad. I'm sure that's not what it's going to be. I haven't watched it ahead of time, as I do with all these things. I don't watch it ahead of time, but I figured given the state of the world right now, a decidedly political TEDx. Actually, I think this is actually, I take it back. This might be, is it? It is an actual TED Talk. This is not TEDx. This is not your dollar store, Temu brand TED Talk. This is an actual TED Talk. So, and again, 20 minutes from now, I'll start that up in a few minutes and get everything ready there. Otherwise, Sinatra, thank you so much for joining me on this momentous occasion.
Indeed.
Moderators, thank you for keeping an eye on things, even though everyone here is so well behaved. You have very, very little to do. Everybody who donated, thank you guys so much for your generosity. It's very, very nice of you. Hope you enjoy the show in the evening and the rest of the week ahead of the weekend. Oh, by the way, before I really forget, I do have a Discord server. Did you know I have a Discord server, Sinatra?
I do, and I'm in it.
Oh, okay. Well, he's inside my server now, right, guys? So anyway, there's a link to the Discord server in the chat right now. If you'd like to join the Discord server, click on that. You'll find yourself on the landing channel called Say Hello. And in addition to saying hello, you have to say the secret word. The secret word will tell me that you're not a bot, actually watch the show, and have earned the right, the privilege, the entitlement to join the Discord server. And today's secret word is, what is today's secret word, Sinatra?
Hello.
Okay, just say hello, hello. And as long as you say it twice, I'll know that you watched the show.
I would have told you it's some Bidenism, but I don't know how you spell. I get it with Putin.
How about
I'm
this?
not sure
How
how
about
you
this?
spell that.
You get two options. You can either say hello, hello, or hello anyways. One of the two.
Hello.
And I'll know that you watched the show.
Vice President Trump.
Or yeah, if you say hello, Vice President Trump, you get three options. Oh my gosh, we're giving them away today. 50% off. But everybody go check out Sinatra Says over on the Silent Sin and the AAA stream tomorrow, which starts at 2:30 Pacific, I believe, 4:30 Eastern. Is that right?
5:30 EST.
5:30. I apologize. 5:30 Eastern, 3:30.
It's okay. No one.
Oh, sorry. It's 2. Yeah, it's 2:30 Pacific, 5:30 Eastern. Tomorrow, it's the Silent Sin. Everybody, have a good rest of your week and Friday. Have a good weekend. And I will see you hopefully on TED Excellence in about 20 minutes. Bye, everybody. Bye-bye. As I get to this part.